And we're back with more Lakers Fast Break podcast. Gerald Glassford coming back at you here for Lakers Fast Break. Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week, wherever you get your podcasts and on radio stations worldwide. Catch us there as well. Of course, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Game Source, and of course, the great things that we do all the time here at the Lakers Fast Break. Don't forget our good friend, Mr. Joe Soro. He's always hanging out as Oxide T47 today at LakersBall.com. Plus, he owns a company he's been working hard at all day long. It's Symblates. Symblates with the Y.com. Yes, Darren, as a matter of fact, I did get a chance to eat a little something. So, yes, I did indeed. So, also as well, want to go ahead and mention today that truly appreciate him taking the time to go ahead and talk the Portland Trailblazers today. Of course, it is Peter Sampson. Peter, great to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us here at the Lakers Fast Break.
Yeah, appreciate it. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. We're doing good. Magic Man, he's here. Of course, you've been interacting with him, the madman from Toronto, indeed. Want to go ahead and thank you again for checking us out here at the Lakers Fast Break and being part of our coverage today. I'll go ahead and give a proper intro here in a sec. I just wanted to go ahead and mention, if you get a chance out there, everyone, please go ahead and give our friends at Lakerholics.com a shout out. Empire Jeff TV, Lakers in 5, and also as well the John McCallion channel. Support them on YouTube. But it is our NBA observations, and we are finally down to our last NBA observation.
It's midnight and it's the glass slipper time.
Yes, and it's time to go home, Cinderella. But I will tell you that, of course, the Lakers, we're going to save that one for the day before the season starts. But we have comprised experts from all around the world to go ahead and share their thoughts on their teams for the upcoming season. Plus, each and every one of them shared their thoughts on Los Angeles Lakers. So we'd be remiss if we did not have as our final team out there, non-Lakers team to cover out there, would be the one that is providing the most excitement this offseason. The Portland Trailblazers, who have changed their roster a little bit more than once in the past few days. And again, Peter Sampson is here, Portland sports aficionado extraordinaire. Peter, great to have you here. Like I was saying earlier, cannot thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us. I truly appreciate everything that you're doing out there, all the great work, especially on social media, on Twitter. Want to ask you first, though, when it comes to Portland, obviously getting rid of a longtime stalwart and arguably the greatest Blazer ever, who, depending on who you talk to, in Damian Lillard, obviously did not come easy. But for Joe Cronin, the GM of the Portland Trailblazers, he had to make the tough call. So even though not everything is finalized as far as this trade is concerned, because there still could be some pieces that could be moved. So far, after Damian Lillard gets traded to Milwaukee for pieces coming back, and also as well, part of those pieces, which is Drew Holiday, gets traded yesterday to Boston for even more coming back in. Right now, as the dust is kind of settling on this, transactions that Portland's been doing, what do you rate Joe Cronin's activity so far with this trade?
In general, you have to kind of look at it in two different ways. Overall, you have to take into account his job of maybe building around Damian Lillard, which I don't think it's any secret that Trailblazers fans are pretty disappointed in that aspect. And look, he inherited a team that needed to be torn down. Neil O'Shea leaves a good, season and a half ago now, season ago. And he's got some bloated contracts. He has some pieces that don't fit, and he needs to make some moves. And he essentially had a fire sale. You have CJ McCollum going to New Orleans. You have Robert Covington, Norman Powell going to LA. And the team sort of, is in flux. That being said, this was sold as we're going to retool, not rebuild. We're going to put pieces around Damian Lillard. And I think where the mistake was made is being so public with those declarations to the point that you have 29 other GMs that know, hey, this guy's desperate. We're not going to give him anything. And I think until the actual day of the NBA draft, when you saw Charlotte not take Scoot Henderson number 2, I think Joe Cronin wanted to build around Damian Lillard. But at that point, you have his replacement, you have the future. You're looking at a guy that's going to be 37 years old, making $60 million a couple years from now. And ultimately, he had to make the move. Now, as far as what he got, and we're talking in the short term just this week, I think the trade is, I mean, you maybe don't call it a home run, but I think it's about as close as you can get considering the lack of leverage that he had. When Dame and his agent, Aaron Goodwin, they come out and they say, yeah, I want to trade, and it's only going to be to Miami. I mean, what is he supposed to do? And I don't know if there's any real truth to this. I know Miami fan is really kind of hurt. They think that it was all out of spite. I don't think the lack of dealing with Miami was out of spite, but I do think spite played into it a little bit. And I don't think it hurts them that they got a great package. They sent Dame to a contender. I mean, maybe the favorite in the East. And oh, by the way, it hurts Miami. And then we have this Drew Holiday deal. And oh, by the way, moving him to Boston also hurts Miami. So look, Portland, I could talk for this entire show about Portland's lack of success and injury issues with big men. And now you've got DeAndre Ayton, who I think needed a change of scenery. I think we could all agree on that. It's a little surprising that Monty Williams butted heads with anybody. Monty Williams, one of the great guys in the NBA. But Chris Paul wears on everyone. And I know he's not in Phoenix anymore, but that situation had run its course. So I think DeAndre Ayton going to be highly motivated to succeed. But then if he's not, and it turns out he's just this kind of slacker, already got paid sort of guy, you got Robert Williams coming in, even if he's only good for, say, 25 minutes a game. He's only going to play 60 games, but that's a guy who can immediately butt in and put pressure on DeAndre Ayton. You've got the picks and the swaps with Milwaukee. And what I think Heat fan didn't necessarily understand is we don't really want your picks because you're always kind of good. You're either really good or you're just sort of good. Where Milwaukee, once Dame is retired, or what I think probably retiring as a Trailblazer after this contract, maybe as a 6th, 7th, or 8th man, and Giannis maybe isn't what he is, and Middleton's out the door, and Lopez is out the door. A superstar free agent's not coming to Milwaukee the same way they don't come to Portland. Those picks and those swaps, I think they're going to be valuable. So I got to give Cronin, in the totality, I've got to give him a B+. But if we're just talking this week, it's a home run.
Once again, it's Peter Sampson. Please go ahead and check him out on Twitter. I'll get his Twitter handle up here in a second here on the screen. Truly appreciate the time he's taken to go ahead and check us out today. Right there for us at twitter.com/Peter Sampson. Magic Man, go ahead, my friend. You line this great interview up. You knock him out, my friend.
Absolutely. Peter, thank you. You've been a staple in the Portland sports scene for well over, a decade and a half now, as far as I've been blogging online. And my question to you is, there hasn't been a lot of time for, or at least haven't heard a lot of reflecting on the Dame era, because everything has been so fast and furious the past week and a half. So 11 years. He's got some very special moments, not only in Trailblazers history, but in NBA playoff lore. How do you see the Dame era? And my other question is, I thought as you were talking about the long history, unfortunate history of Portland big men being hurt, I couldn't help but think of 2017 is when I thought they that was kind of the beginning of the end of the merry-go-round, because they spent 2 first-round picks to select Zach Collins, who never worked out. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, but I think he played in less than 100 games for Portland over his tenure. So do you think that's where the seeds were kind of planted there on them mistiming everything? And how do you feel the Dame era overall totality from beginning to end? What's the biggest takeaway?
Yeah, that's such a big question. I mean, I don't just cover the Trailblazers. I live in Portland. I'm a lifelong Portlander. Damian Lillard truly transcends sports in this city. He means more to the I don't know. Nike probably means more. Adidas is here. I mean, but Damian Lillard, it means so much. Like people that don't even care about sports. I'll see them in Dame jerseys, and no joke, he'll go out. We have a beautiful green city. You would always see on Twitter randomly, like, oh, Dame's out at whatever park with the U-Haul just giving sneakers away. And he didn't announce it. He just did it. And then you actually get into the sports moments. I mean, of course, the shot against OKC, which one of the great moments of my career was jumping live, on my sports radio show within, immediately after that game, being there, being credentialed, being in press row, seeing that happen, and then just jumping on, for 2 hours with. I mean, it was pure pandemonium. And so I like to remember those moments, the shot against Houston, the 71 points just this season. But I think ultimately, when we get away from the emotions and we look at this era, say 20 years from now, the way you would look at maybe the Clyde Drexler era or the Brandon Roy era, I think is a great example of this. It's going to be what if, and it's going to be, man, it was a shame that he couldn't have more put around him. And look, I mean, you can really get into the question of, can Dame be the number one on a championship team? I mean, my heart says yes, but my eyeballs watching him play defense honestly probably say no. But that being said, it should have been better. And you hit on it with that 2017 draft. I mean, 3 first round picks the Trailblazers had. And they're coming off a summer in 2016 where they spent $250 million on Myers Leonard, Mo Harkless, Alan Crabb, Evan. I don't even want to say his name, Evan Turner. I mean, I love BT.
Turner, yeah.
And don't get me wrong, being in that locker room, there is not a better quote in the NBA than Evan Turner, but that man did not deserve $80 million. And I'm blanking on one. And then a guy that's worse than them somehow. I mean, it was just.
Insane. Maybe it was Cantor.
No, they dealt for Cantor. I don't remember who it was. Festus Ezeli.
Ezeli, yeah. Who can forget Festus Ezeli?
Who had a dead man's tendon in his knee and never suited up, shockingly. So, but you can at least go, well, everyone overspent. Timothy Mozgov, anyone? Luol Deng? Like, everyone sort of made that mistake because the cap went up. Okay, well, it's 2017. We got these 3 picks. Okay, we're going to move up. That's fine. Now, there was a rumor, and I can't say that it's true, but there was a lot of smoke. That was when Paul George wanted out from the Pacers. And CJ McCollum and 3 first-round picks, I hear, could have potentially got it done. Now, I know there's a little bit of bad blood. Kevin Pritchard was there, and he was a former Blazers exec, and he wasn't necessarily keen to help Paul Allen, who was still with us at the time. But CJ McCollum, 3 first-round picks, was not put on the table. And it wasn't the first-round picks that were reportedly the issue. It was, you can't touch CJ McCollum. So refusing to move off of CJ when you see, and CJ's a great player. I love CJ. He can cook like no one's business. But him and Dame, there's so much overlap, both in strength and in weakness. Okay, well, let's see what we do with these picks. You trade 2 of those 3 to jump into the top 10. And you draft Zach Collins, not OG Anunoby, not Bam Adebayo, not the other Collins, John Collins, not Donovan Mitchell. Had you maybe looked to that deal for PG-13, you kept that pick in the 20s. You draft Caleb Swanigan, RIP, but not. I mean, you can't really blame him for missing on Kuzma. Kind of, no one really knew what Kuzma was going to be until he popped, but whiffing on that draft, refusing to move off of CJ, and then spending that money in 2016, it was doomed from there. I mean, there was nothing that could be done, and they were reshuffling the deck chairs, and the band played on the Titanic, and they played some great tunes. There was some fun, but deep down, I mean, you knew that it was never going to happen. That 2019, the Western Conference Finals against Golden State, that was fool's gold. Like, Houston ended up you dodged Houston, you get OKC, you luck out. Paul George has the shoulder injury. He's kind of struggling. You get that miracle game, that Dame, hits, 50 points, the game winner. You have Denver, who's not quite like Jokic was an animal, but he wasn't quite the Jokic that we see now. Murray, what maybe wasn't quite as playoff, developed. Michael Porter Jr. They still pushed Portland to 7 games,
yeah.
and
they needed CJ in that game 7 because Dame was unavailable.
Exactly. Dame, he rolled over on the ball and he hurt his ribs. And it's funny because CJ was actually, if you look up the individual game score, like CJ was actually not great in that series. But in that game 7, he and Rodney Hood were the two that made it happen. And then you go up against Golden State, and it was lights out. Like, here's reality. That was cute. You got a nice path to the Western Conference Finals. But I think that Neil O'Shea and the rest of the organization, they believed like we're right there. I was looking the other day. 11 of the 15 guys on that roster aren't even in the NBA anymore, let alone on the Trailblazers. They're not even on an active roster. Like maybe Rodney Hood gets picked up or something, but that tells you all you need to know. So with the Damian Lillard era, it's what could have happened. It's a lot of regret.
So let me ask you this before I send it over to Joe Soro here coming up next. Did you guys in Portland, or did Portland give up Damian Lillard? Did they trade him a little bit too late, or was it just right about the same time? Do you think he should have been traded earlier? Because our one of our members of our chat actually was asking that question, problem child. So wanted to go ahead and reiterate that if possible.
Yeah, it sort of depends on how you look at it. If you're talking strictly, numbers, guys as assets, getting max return, you probably maybe wanted to do it a little earlier, but ultimately, look, he's got 3 years and a player option, and he's not gonna pass up that player option. 37 years old, $60 million, he's taking it. I don't know how much the decline is going to be, but ultimately, look, basketball is a business, and I always tell my friends, I'm a pretty kind of a geeky guy when it comes to advanced metrics. A lot of my friends are, and I always have to remind them, look, we are outnumbered like 100 to 1, and the vast majority of Blazer fans, it's once or twice a week. Oh, I actually have an hour here. I'm going to pop the game on. I'm going to go to 3 games a year, and I'm wearing my Dame jersey. Those are the people that pay the bills and keep that organization profitable. And Dame Lillard, here in Portland, man, he was a bigger name than the Blazers. As we got to remind ourselves, we're Trailblazers fans, not necessarily Dame fans. But I mean, it it probably was a little too late to move off of him. But I understand why they kept him. It was a business decision, and he sells sponsorships. I mean, he sells Toyotas about an hour south of here. He owns a car dealership. He's that the ads. He's all over the TV. He was in a giant mural outside the arena. I mean, he meant so much to this city that I think they held on, and I think there was a financial reason for it though.
Once again, it is Peter Sampson. Please follow him as I just did at Peter Sampson on Twitter. He actually already retweeted us out there, so we are truly indebted to him for doing so. Please go ahead and support him today at Peter Sampson on Twitter. Also here today, good man indeed. It is the guy behind Ox1947 at LakersBall.com. What a beaming smile that is from Joe Soro today. It is Joe Soro from Lakers Ball, and also as well Simblades with a Y.com. Joe, Peter Sampson's here talking the Trailblazers, a team that's had a relatively quiet offseason.
Well, I know that you guys have probably elaborated on the trade enough here in the first 20 minutes. I actually do have a question I've been curious to have answered, and it involves the draft. Gerald and I are big Scoot Henderson fans, and we are still surprised that he didn't go number 2. When, let's say, Portland Trail Blazer fans were hearing the information coming in before the picks, were you guys giddy that Scoot might drop the 3? Because I believe that's question 1, and then of course it'll tail into probably why it made the decision to trade Dame easier by getting Scoot.
Yeah, it absolutely did. We were giddy. It was almost shock that, but also, I mean, look, were we shocked that Charlotte passed on him? Yes, but also no. I mean, look, I don't want to disrespect anyone who came on this wonderful program and talked about the Hornets recently, but like you knew they were going to make that move, right? You knew they were. And I guess I understand. Like we have LaMelo Ball, he's not only the future, but he's the present. But I just think if you have a talent like Ball and you have a talent like Scoot, you got to find a way to play those guys together. You can make it work. And honestly, I would say the same thing about Portland. It was, look, we got to find a way to let those guys play together. Talent rules all. Figure out the fit later. We're not good enough to be tinkering around the edges. We've taken 2 years in a row and we have the number 3 pick. We got that pick for a reason. It's because we sucked. Like, just figure it out. And obviously Dame and his camp that sort of made their decision for them, which I get. But I think the idea was maybe you look to move off of Anthony Simons. In fact, I know they were trying to do that. There were no takers, which is why I was surprised that the Heat fans were surprised that there were no takers for Tyler Hero. Similar players, similar contracts. But I think the writing was on the wall. But man, Scoot, I don't know if you had a chance to watch Blazers Media Day at all. Man, Scoot's the guy. Scoot is camera ready. Some of these guys are shy and maybe a little feeling their way. I'm not, necessarily saying he's going to light the world on fire from day one, but I think they got a great one in Scoot Henderson.
Great thoughts right there. Magic Man, any thoughts, any continual questions here for Peter Sampson?
Well, I just wanted to follow up. I agree with Peter from the outside looking in because I recently read an article that Slam Magazine had that they did for their rookie volume, and I agree with Peter. Like from the outside looking in, he fits the profile. He's more truthful than honest, which is kind of rare for an NBA player. So I think that's actually pretty refreshing for the Blazers. I will say, I'll ask you a straight up question, Peter. Given all the circumstances around this, who's a Blazer longer, Time Lord or DeAndre Ayton?
Ooh,
That's a
good
great question.
Yeah.
I'm going to say DeAndre Ayton. I think what's going to happen is Time Lord is going to play well and get maybe 20, 25 minutes a game. But I think ultimately he's going to play just well enough to light a fire under Ayton. You're going to see he's for real. He's not pouting like he was in Phoenix. And then at that point, man, you think about the value that dude has for a contender. He just needs to show he's healthy. Every time he comes back from that knee, he's just a little bit less explosive. But if he's anything like he was in the finals a year and a half ago at this point, huge, huge value. And I mean, if I'm wrong, hey, Time Lord. I mean, I'm good with that.
One of the things I want to ask you, though, is also on Scoot Henderson. I had the privilege of seeing him and Victor Wembanyama the first time that they met each other here in a suburb of Las Vegas, here where I'm at in Henderson. Actually, I might be one of the few people that actually has a physical ticket for that game since it was actually digital. So, yeah, so I'm holding on to that baby, waiting to cash in on that. Need I digress? But I don't know if it actually will, but who knows. But when it comes to Scoot Henderson, where do you see him personally? I mean, with Portland, I know that most of the individuals I talked to my good friend Rafael Barlow from the NBA Draft Junkies, and also what he does for Locked On NBA Draft Podcast. He is a huge Portland Trailblazers fan, and he is excited for what's to come for Scoot Henderson. Your thoughts on what the future could be like for Scoot Henderson?
Yeah, certainly a different style game than we're used to with Damian Lillard. But I do think the one thing they have in common, before I get to the differences, is I just see that sort of intangible leadership. Damian Lillard, man, he calm, cool, collected, got guys on his side, was able to really hold that locker room. I mean, look, I'm sad he's gone. I can question the way he handled things. I don't love the way, he may be Miami or bust, but he's a real one. That's a real dude right there, and he's a good guy. I kind of see that in Scoot Henderson. But their style of play, I mean, Scoot's a much more prototypical point guard. Clearly, more athletic. Definitely not the deep threat that Dame is. But I'll tell you, from what I've seen, I mean, the jumper not as rough as advertised. I mean,
mid-range, he's really good.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he's going to fit a little bit more with Chauncey Billups' play style. I think this is the year where we'll finally see if a Chauncey Billups' play style is even a good thing or not. We actually kind of don't know. I have my doubts. But I think that we're going to see a lot more of that classic prime Russ Westbrook sort of drive and dish. Great court vision that I've seen from Scoot, but I think the key really is, over the course of several years, kind of developing that outside shot. But I think we're going to see a lot more of pushing the tempo. I mean, because it's not just Scoot here. Simons is athletic as all get out. Sharp is insanely athletic, and then you add, DeAndre Ayton, Time Lord. We'll see how the knee is, but he's a huge lob threat. And then you've kind of got Jeremy Grant, who's sort of a jack of all trades except rebounding. But I think you have a squad that's maybe going to push the tempo a little bit. But I think Scoot's going to excel in that sort of transition game.
Yes, endorphins, Scoot can pass. If you got a chance to catch that first game against Victor, it was all about him scoring in the first half. But once they tried to figure him out on the defensive end, he became much more of a willing passer and distributed very well. I think he got 8 or 9 assists in that game, if I remember correctly. But everybody talks about the scoring in that first half, but he can distribute as well. Go ahead.
I was just going to say his speed will allow him to have a lot of DKOs, driving kickouts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he will, like, I think he's a smaller version of SGA if he tops out. He's just a 3-level scorer, and he can be a 3-level playmaker.
I'm just very excited to see him. I saw stardom when I was there, when I watched him personally, and I think that Portland's got themselves, health willing, of course, a keeper for a long time to come. Joe, any thoughts for Peter Sampson, my friend?
There's a very good chance that this team, I don't know, the parts seem to work. You've got the right talent in each of the spots that matter, in my opinion. I think Portland should everyone accept their roles. I know this is kind of like a cliche for every team, but let's just say they do. Even though they're relatively new together, I believe that Portland could be a playoff threat. So get ready for. Everyone's been excited about OKC, and they should. Yeah. I think the Pelicans are going to drop off considerably, but Portland's going to. At this point, I don't know if it's a surprise because they did get back really good talent, but I think if they mesh, which I think they will, they're going to be a playoff team, and I think Portland did a great job getting what they got for Damian Lillard. I don't think I was surprised. I think Joe Conan was. He seemed like he knew what he was doing. You could just feel it. And this last trade was just like a damn okay. Like you get a player like Time Lord out of that. Brogdon I know is kind of a hit and miss, but you get an energy guy now with Ayton. Like you got the Ayton, you got Williams as a front court, then you got Scoot. To me, that's how I like that kind of lineup. I like a good power forward that's got energy, and then a ball handling perimeter player that can break down defenses and score and dish. They have the formula. So it's going to come down to obviously Chauncey Billups. This is kind of like a Chauncey Billups team now. A team that he won a championship with that was kind of similar to this. So I would say that Portland at this point, you could say might have won the offseason a little bit to some.
Yeah, I think they did. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs though, because if they're playing well, they're going to pull the plug again at the end of the season. Like that pick is owed to Chicago as lottery protected. They want that to convey into 2 seconds. I think it's next year, might be one more year.
It's a bad mentality though, Peter.
I agree. I agree.
I say this because I believe Scoot is John Morant with a brain. And I hate to throw Ja down the gutter on this one.
I get it.
But the decision making that he's made the last year is warranted. So imagine Scoot being John Morant without the tomfoolery. I'm not trying to put any pressure on Scoot. I just think he's that talented. And if he is rookie of the year, DeAndre Ayton has been there. He's been around winning. He's got that. Also, Time Lord's been there too. So that plays a part in that. And I don't know. I think Portland needs to stop worrying about the draft and worrying about draft picks. I think they need to start going after it now because Williams and Ayton are not old guys. And Scoot obviously is coming in as the star. You guys got to start winning now. It's time. You guys have had some really bad luck. It started with Bill Walton. Luckily, you guys were able to get him to stay healthy for at least 1 year. You won a championship that year. But since then, it's like you guys didn't bring Sabonis in at the right time. I think you guys might have won a championship in the 90s with that. And then, of course, Brandon Roy, one of the, in my opinion, in my lifetime, the biggest, like, minus, of course, the deaths of Reggie Lewis and geez, I'm drawing a blank, Celtics, Len Bias. Brandon Roy's career, who I think could have changed a lot of things for Portland. Unfortunately, didn't solidify. But this needs to start getting to a point. I know if I'm a Portland fan, you guys need to start thinking about winning instead of the future.
Yeah, the real question that I have, I sort of alluded to it, is like, all right, Chauncey Billups has his style of guy. You mentioned it as well. Well, now can the guy actually coach? We got some real questions about that in Portland, and we're not saying maybe necessarily like, oh, he's clearly a terrible coach. Like there have been some questionable out of timeout sort of stuff, but it's just when you're tanking the way they have the last 2 years. Like it's not his fault. You can't necessarily hold it against him. I mean, I heard in year one that maybe practices weren't. Maybe it wasn't as buttoned up as it used to be under Terry Stotts. I don't know if that's changed now, but this is the year where maybe he doesn't have necessarily as many excuses. And I know that sounds insane. You just traded a guy that averaged 30 a game last year. But again, he wants to run and gun. He wants athletes. He wants defenders. I mean, imagine minutes Matisse Thybulle and Time Lord on the floor at the same time. That's a couple great defenders. And especially with a shot blocking big like that, Thybulle, his thing is it's gambling. I mean, I'm sure you've watched it in Philly. He gambles in those passing lanes. If he's got a shot blocker behind him, he can do that. So if Billups can't get some sort of results, and whether that's winning, it's progress, whatever it is, because any young team, you got to learn to win, right? And I think you're kind of alluding to that, where at a certain point, look, you can't intentionally tank. It sets bad habits, but you got to learn to win. It's like, oh, they're spooky, but they still only won 30 games. And then it's like, oh, they're kind of good. They made the playoffs, and then they got shell shocked, and then they won a series. And you see it all the time with these teams that grow organically, Milwaukee and some other groups. So I think this is the year where Billups, he's got to show something. Whether it's the playoffs, the play-in, whether it's having a pretty good year and then Cronin pulls the plug, and I'm not saying that's right or that's wrong. I get the argument either way. You get another pick, you don't give up your pick, but don't set some bad habits. But I've got to see something from Billups no matter what that end result is.
You're going to probably see that within probably half the season because looking at what I'm assuming is going to be the starting lineup, it's going to be Ayton, Williams, Grant, Simons, and Scoot, right? Am I wrong on that? Am I thinking that's what it's going to be?
I don't think they're going to start Williams. I think it's going to be Grant at the 4, and then it's either going to be Thybulle or Sharp at the 3.
Okay. That makes sense. That might preserve Williams.
I think Simons, though, wouldn't he be better fit coming off the bench? Again, you had a small backcourt for years, and you transitioned to another small backcourt.
100%.
But Gerald, as much as
are you paying a guy $25 million to
hold on? As much as we detest the 3-guard lineup, what do you think Portland's going to play this year, Gerald? They invested a lot in Scoot Henderson. They invested a lot in Shaden Sharp, and they've invested a lot in Anthony Simons. They're going to have to play those 3 guys together a lot.
Go ahead, Joe.
I guess that if he can channel his Manu Ginobili, Simon's coming off the bench would greatly enhance the team.
I just think he's a gunner. He's a scorer. He's got a scorer mentality. He's not great on the defensive end, and he's 6'2". Those are things that would probably say be best for him to just come off the bench and just be that microwave. You like the microwave used to be. Just come off the bench, get you 20 to 22 a game coming off the bench.
He'll win 6 Man of the Years left and right if if he decides to take one for the team. I'm that's going to be the tough part for Billups. The thing is with coaches, it's not so much X's and O's a lot of times. A lot of times the talent will dictate whether you're going to be able to run a cohesive offense or not. But it's the Phil Jackson used to talk about it, of course, and I know it's a lot easier for you to, create a community when you have Michael Jordan, Pippen, Shaq, and Kobe. But I think Chauncey has to somehow let everyone understand that we want to really, truly win. And I really like the Portland team. I really do. I think they might be one big player away in the next few years of really, really contending. And it's time to get into that. We need to contend every year for the next 5 to 10 year mode. That's all that's left in Portland. It's kind of been overdue here, and they need to start focusing on that and get out of this rut of worrying about the future. I think that's kind of where it sits. And if Billups isn't able to, I guess, mentally have his team ready game in and game out, they're going to have to figure out a way to get the right coach that could coach up Ayton and Scoot, because I think those are going to be your two pillars for the next 5 to 10 years.
Because it sounds like Chauncey Billups is not for you the 100% definitive answer long term.
I mean, for me, he had never coached a game at any level before he got a 5-year deal from Neil Olshey. I mean, that's his guy. Chauncey Billups is Neil Olshey's guy, and it's nothing personal against Billups. It's just, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, you couldn't get. I didn't necessarily love, the other options that summer were. And look, Terry Stotts is a good coach. He really is. And I know the knock against Stotts is he can't coach defense. So that's not true. Anytime they've actually had defenders here in Portland, he's had top 10 defense a couple times, even with Damian Lillard at point.
Yeah, Peter, before Nurkic had that compound fracture, he was one of the pretty good hedge centers that we had in the NBA. So yeah, I agree with you. That's really kind of understated about Stotts, and it's really from casuals who don't really know what the hell they're talking about. But go on, sir.
Quick aside. So
just everyone.
Quick aside. That night that Nurkic disgustingly broke his leg at Blazers Edge. We do Blazers Edge night every year, and we literally, the community comes together, and we bring thousands of underprivileged kids to see a game, because otherwise they'd never be able to afford it. It was that game. And I know it. Look, it's obviously that situation is worse for Yusuf Nurkic. Don't get me wrong. I'm not being insensitive, but it had to be that game that would bring a bunch of children to see a grown man snap his leg in half. But I digress. And Terry Stotts, good coach, could coach defense. We don't know. Like Chauncey Billups, and you're right that it's not necessarily X's and O's, but it is a little bit. And I can tell you, before they pulled the plug last year, his X's and O's were horrible. And I believe that he can adjust. I certainly believe he's got a good basketball mind. I know he does. I mean, he's probably forgotten more about basketball than I'll ever know. This is the year we got to see it in action. We got to see it.
Once again, it's Peter Sampson. Please go ahead and follow him today on Twitter at Peter Sampson, right there for you. One of the things I want to ask, though, is we talked about what a possible starting lineup it can be, and the reason why Simons, for many, may be coming off the bench, or Robert Williams may be coming off the bench, is because of Jeremy Grant, who was given a very lucrative extension, which I think already many in Portland have some buyer's remorse on. Your thoughts, my friend? This has been called by many, and when I look at it, it is probably in my top 3 of worst contracts right now in the NBA. I'm not going to say any trade contract is untradeable because we saw Russell Westbrook here, and if that contract can be traded, I think anything can. Your thoughts, though, when it comes to Jeremy Grant, and is he probably going to be able to still be traded, or do you see him as a foundation piece going forward?
Look. First of all, I like Jeremy Grant. I love what he did last year. He kind of fell off it. He suffered a concussion and kind of fell off a little bit. But anytime a guy can shoot 40% from three, have that length, he was put in some tough sort of spots defensively. He's one of those guys. He's pretty good at everything. Maybe not elite at anything aside from rebounding. He's a terrible rebounder. I think we all know that. But the way Billups was having defensive switch on the perimeter, you end up with Jeremy Grant guarding really athletic small guards. Not a situation you want to be. He can get a hand up. He can guard a 3-and-D guy. He can guard a 3-point shooter, but he can't necessarily hedge out and retreat that well. He was asked to do a lot of that. So I like Jeremy Grant. And I think anytime, you finally get Dame some help and you go, hey, another dude that averages 20 and shoots 40% from three and plays passable defense, which we've never seen here in Portland. That's fantastic. But when he signed that deal, I don't like I almost laughed. It's like, look, you knew he was going to secure the bag because he had all the leverage, because Dame has kind of flirted with asking out a little bit. And I know there was the whole thing during when he was with playing in the Olympics where Henry Abbott had the report and he refuted it. And by the way, I know for a fact that Abbott was correct. I know that for a fact. And then he threw him under the bus, which I didn't love. But it was his way of putting pressure on the organization. And so you kind of knew, look, if you don't re-sign Jeremy Grant, Dame's going to say, screw this, and he's going to walk. Well, it's not like Grant didn't know that. And Clutch or CAA, whoever he's with, I think Clutch, knew that as well. In 5 years, what was it, 160? I think it was 160. Oh, makes my heart hurt. That being said, I guess you got to pay someone, right? You got a lot of guys on rookie deals. I know Anthony Simons makes, roughly 25. Ayton signed his deal. You still got the room. I think they're going to trade him. You're not going to find a partner probably this year, but maybe it doesn't help to have a vet here for 1 year. But even when you do finally find a way to move off that contract, boy, oh boy, is that a negative asset. Like you're going to get maybe some terrible expiring back, and maybe you got to send a pick with him. I don't know, but I certainly don't think he's going to spend the full 5 years in Portland.
Well, that's a good thing you got those extra picks and pick swaps. There you go.
There you go.
Joe, any thoughts that more for the Portland Trailblazers with Peter Sampson?
Well, what would you get for Jeremy? What do you think that could bring in?
Ooh, nothing great, but something that expires earlier. I don't know what's left on Ben Simmons' dead body. I mean, we're truly talking something like that. Sorry, I'm shaking my camera here. We're truly talking probably a negative asset. I mean, and again, it's one of those things where he's still a great player. He could absolutely crush it for a contender, but as soon as he locked up for 5 years, 32, I mean, you made that choice. He's under that deal. So I think he's going to be here in the short term. And then he's just going to be a negative asset going out at some point. I really do think maybe you have to attach something with that just for an expiring.
I agree with you on that. It looks like, speaking from personal experience, again, with Russell Westbrook, it's most likely that you're going to have to. And, at least you have at least an abundance, or at least more than what most teams have when it comes to extra picks, just to be able to do just that. Yeah. Sean, any more questions for Peter? I mean, because again, he's been a great guest so far, talking the Portland Trailblazers. Any more thoughts, my friend?
Yeah, Peter, you had mentioned earlier when Joe was espousing his praise for Cronin that the Blazers could potentially be a sleeper playoff team. You had said that no matter if that happens or not, Cronin's going to try and find a way to circulate the drain, so to speak. So they potentially have a lot of flexibility here. You're right. They may have Chicago's first round pick. They have their own, and they also in the trade with Drew Holiday acquired the Warriors' top 4 protected pick in 2024. Do you see them doing anything with that? Because I could see them keeping it. I could see them, like you said, dangling that in maybe a Grant move, or maybe dangling it to try and get something else. So I'm wondering what you think they're going to possibly do with all this flexibility.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that Warriors pick is really intriguing. Certainly, you don't expect it to land in the top 4 and be protected, but draft position, it's based on the regular season, not the playoffs. They're another year older. I mean, Draymond already might miss 3 weeks, a month with that ankle. Steph, is still Steph. I mean, we saw it, but maybe if he misses, just 7, 8 games. Clay, they a little bit less depth. I mean, who knows? Jonathan Kuminga is such an enigma to me. I wouldn't be surprised if he exploded this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he was just nothing. But I think that pick might be a little bit more valuable than people expect. And that's not to say a top 10 or anything like that. I think that pick might be in the teens. And it might even be in a year when they still manage to make a really deep run in the playoffs, because when the games actually count, they're going to buckle down and make it happen. So I think it depends on where it lands. If it's in the, in the mid 20s, we'll say, and they've had another great year, you might end up maybe trying to flip it with a Grant, possibly. If Brogdon is still here, I don't think he will be. He's going to play with the Blazers, and I think they're going to look to move him to a contender at the deadline. But something like that might happen. They have some flexibility this year, but I think they're hell-bent on not letting that pick convey to Chicago. It has to be in the lottery. Now, I tend to agree that sets up potentially bad habits, and especially a guy like maybe a DeAndre Ayton. Like, some of these guys, you can't set these losing patterns. But I just think they're going to do it. I think they're going to land one more top 10 pick, and they're going to maybe pair that with, if you have a Golden State, say what I said is true, which we don't know, and say that lands at 16. Well, then, okay, say you've got pick 9 and 16. We can be happy with that. We can flip that and get a young piece. Maybe we can take both of those and move up to pick 6. Joe Cronin has shown, last summer or last season, a lot of doubts among Trailblazers fans. I think he's shown some creative thinking that we didn't necessarily have with the previous regime. So I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with that flexibility.
Awesome indeed. Once again, it is Peter Sampson. Please go ahead and check out all the great work that he's doing today by starting off with his Twitter. That's at Peter Sampson right there for you. Guys, any last questions on the Portland Trailblazers for Peter, or should we get into hearing his thoughts on our Lakers? Joe or Sean?
Peter, how would you say I remember about 10 years ago, the most hostile environment in the whole NBA was the Rose Garden.
Yes, it was.
It was the worst place to play in the NBA. Not because of
for the Lakers, absolutely.
For the Lakers, the crowd, it was almost like a bowl, right? And the crowd was really on top of you. And even before it, there was a lot of rowdiness. How has it changed? Because now it's called the Moda Center, right? I like to just call it the Rose Garden how has the home crowd advantage changed over the years?
That is a great question. And first of all, you are now an honorary Trailblazers fan because you refuse to call it Moda Center. We all just refer to it as the RG, the Rose Garden. Just call it the RG. We will not call it Moda. It's a terrible name. And the Rose Garden was a great name. It's the city of roses. It was a great arena. Yeah, and man, back in the day, those Lakers battles. I mean, look, Portland's been irrelevant on the national stage for a couple years now, but I mean, late 90s through the Kobe era, man, it was so. And the Lakers, man, they would win 63 games, but they were 0-2 in Portland. Kobe had a long losing streak, specifically in the RG, so it was awesome, man. The crowd, it's not what it was, and I think it's for a couple reasons. I think again the arena experience has been sort of corporatized a little bit to match just kind of the NBA wide experience. I think that's a league wide thing, not necessarily a Portland specific thing. Frankly, they haven't been very good the last couple years. I mean, just swaths of empty seats. But you win 30 games, that's going to happen. But even before that, outside of those magic moments, I mean, that when Paul George or when Dame hit that shot over Paul George, there was like grown men like bawling in the aisles. I'm not kidding. It was amazing. It was so amazing. But on a game to game basis, it's been a little more subdued. And I know that a lot of people have moved to Oregon and Portland over the last 20 years or so, and maybe they don't have that long sort of history with the team. Blazer Mania in the early 90s and Clyde and Terry Porter and all those guys. The heartbreak of Brandon Roy, Aldridge, and Oden, and just all that's kind of gone with being a Blazers fan. So it's not bad. It's not dead as long as they're actually trying to win games. So the last 2 years aside, but it's not like it was, man. Whatever when you experienced it and it was just a madhouse, we're not quite there. But I think with the turning of the page, as painful as it is, it's like a breakup. It's like getting divorced, right? And it's like, I don't even hate you, but it's better for us that we just go our separate ways. And all our friends have been telling us this for like 4 years, and we're finally going to listen to it. Once you get over that, I think Blazer fans are ready to fall in love again. And if nothing else, again, just a different team. It's a different era. It's going to be different marketing. I think they're going to push the pace. There's two things you can sell. If you're an NBA team, you're a marketing exec and a general manager. You either sell winning or you sell hope. Well, there hasn't been much winning, but there's a whole lot of hope to sell. And I think that it's going to get maybe not what it was, say, 10, 15 years ago, but I think we'll work our way back there starting this year.
Well, there you have it. Some great thoughts from Peter Sampson talking about the Portland Trailblazers. But as we ask all of our great guests their thoughts on the Los Angeles Lakers. So, Joe, I'm going to start with you. Any Lakers-centric questions for Peter Sampson before we head on out?
Is this the year we sweep Portland in Portland?
I'm going to say you split. I mean,
that sounds about right. I actually need to look back. When was the last? Wasn't the last time we swept Portland one of our crap years about 6-7 years ago?
I think so.
It was just, and I remember that after we beat you the second time,
it was 15 or 16.
Yeah. I was like, how the hell?
It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, it didn't matter more than anything. Yeah, it was just, I thought it was hilarious.
Well, because the Rose Garden has always been a pain in for the Lakers. Their Sunday mornings in Toronto, as Magic Man will tell you, those morning games in Toronto kill us. Games back to back, or when you're flying to Denver, those are almost like guaranteed L's at times for us, as far as when we face against you guys. So the Rose Garden, I mean, the kind of support that you had in the past, I'm certainly hoping that you will have it again in the RG going forward.
Oh, man.
There you go. Absolutely.
That's what we're gonna call it from now on, Peter. You have our word.
Yes. Believe me, we're having still a hard time calling it the Crypt here at for us.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's tough, man.
Magic Man, any Lakers-centric questions for Peter?
Yes. So Peter, what would you say is the fatal flaw for the Lakers? Where's their weakest point right now?
Oh, I gotta be honest. I like what you guys. Well, I'm not gonna say I like. I have to caveat this with I'm a Trailblazers fan, so F the Lakers, blah blah blah. But honestly, your trade deadline last year, and I don't just mean getting off Russ, but Rui Hachimura and Jared Vanderbilt, I loved that for you guys. I said automatically, like they have filled a couple. Just spots of desperate need. They're a little more resilient around, like, look, LeBron's LeBron, all the respect in the world to LeBron James. 21st season, man. Like, is he going to play 82? And it's one of those things where anytime you talk about LeBron, you have to caveat it with, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he does, but Like, really, is he going to? And Anthony Davis isn't. When Davis is healthy, I mean, the Lakers are deadly, just deadly. But can you count on 72 games from AD? So I think that's the fatal flaw, is just age and health. But honestly, I look at your roster. I look at Austin Reeves' development. I love that. Austin Reeves, going from the guy who got clowned on social media for, getting those looks and the stuff from LeBron James. And you look at the way he broke out last year. I got to be honest, and I say this as a Trailblazers guy. I like the Lakers makeup this year. I really do.
So I ask you on that note, where do you place both the Portland Trailblazers and the Los Angeles Lakers in the Western Conference this season?
I put the Trailblazers. I know the national sort, and by national I mean odds makers, since they seem to be more accurate than a lot of pundits. I know they have them somewhere around 13th. I'm gonna put them at 12th, but I think they play better than that, and I think they just pull the ripcord for the last dozen games of the season. And you get some of those just unwatchable lineups, like I've never even heard of this dude and I follow it for a living sort of lineups. Had a few of those. Looking up some, guys from Europe, guys from deep in the G League who average single digits in the G League, and you're starting an NBA game. Awesome. I think we get some more of that. So I put Portland there. I think the Lakers, because of the sort of the health questions, I put them sort of middle of the pack in the playoff picture. So I'm thinking, I don't know, AD misses a decent amount of time. Maybe age is starting to catch up to LeBron, where he's truly just great instead of transcendent. Okay, sixth. AD's healthy. And he's still found another gear, and he still averages a magical, what's the LeBron stat line? It's the 27, 7, and 7. He puts up another one of those. Well, maybe you're talking home court advantage. I still look at Denver in the West. I look at some of these teams. But I mean, would it stun me that Lakers finished third or fourth? No, it really wouldn't. So somewhere in that range. I know it's kind of a safe answer, but I just think that the AD health is such a big question for the Lakers. A lot of it comes down to that. But I look at those role players. I love the role players that they picked up, especially at the trade deadline last year. Of course, y'all got Cam Reddish, right? I watched him up close and personal. He's going to be interesting. He's going to play lights out some nights. But the weird thing about Cam Reddish, you guys all evaluate players, and
Yes.
whether it's for a job or a hobby or whatever, you look at these different skill sets. And I'm going to pull a name out, and I'm not comparing these guys as players, but I'm going to use it to make a point. Mario Hezonja. Okay, now Cam Reddish better than Mario Hezonja, but he's another guy like Mario Hezonja where you break down these different angles. Okay, speed. Mario Hezonja, incredibly fast. Handles, got great handles. Court vision, fantastic. Can crash the boards, can box out, understands playmaking, has excellent form. He checks every box, and he sucks at NBA basketball. And it makes no sense from a talent evaluation standpoint. Cam Reddish, a lesser, which is to say better, version of that. You'll watch him play and you go, how is this guy not averaging 19 points a game? And I don't know, maybe this is where he finally figures it out. But he'll drive you mad, but he'll have some nights where, man, he is the most entertaining guy on the floor for like a 5-minute stretch. He just balls out of his mind. I hope he puts it together for you guys, because he seems like a good guy. And I mean, obviously it didn't work out in Atlanta and New York, and I mean in Portland he kind of showed something. But if he can put it together, he's really going to help you guys out.
Once again, it's Peter Sampson. Please go ahead and check him out wherever you get your Twitter at Peter Sampson. But there's more to just Peter Sampson than a great Twitter account, which I got a chance to peruse some of your previous work. And obviously, I don't want to go ahead and just say exactly what you're doing, because at every show that we do with a guest, we always give them the platform at the very end of the show to go ahead and let them know, let our fans know, and let our audience know exactly everything that you're up to and anything you want to go ahead and give a cheap plug to. So bombs away, my friend. Cheap plug time. What you got cooking out there, and let everybody know.
Yeah, I got to be honest, a whole lot of nothing. I just traveled internationally. But you probably know me if you're a Trailblazers fan from Blazers Edge or from my work at 750thegame.com, which I recently left. I think I'm contractually obligated to say that it was mutual. And beyond that, you know how that goes. But I've got something I think might be coming really soon. I don't want to jinx it just yet, but
We'll keep our fingers crossed for you.
you might find me back in the Trailblazers locker room very, very shortly. So follow me on Twitter, and I'll take care of you there.
I have followed him on Twitter, and so you need to as well. That's Peter Sampson. Please go ahead and check out the great work that he's doing today right there on Twitter. And we wish you a tremendous amount of success, Peter. Guys, Joe and Sean, any last questions for Peter before we head on out?
You know what, Peter, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it. And you know what? I hope the future holds well for you.
I
And
do as well.
we need to link up again, because if you're ever back in that locker room, we'd love to have you on again as a friend of the show.
Had a great time. Appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. And once again, Peter Sampson. Go ahead and check out all the great work today by starting with Twitter at Peter Sampson. All right, everyone. That does it. Our final NBA observation for non-Lakers teams. All 29 teams have been done. Team previews for all these teams. YouTube, if you look down below on the Lakers Fast Break channel, I have created a playlist for each and every one of these team previews. So go ahead, check it out. If you missed one, you missed a couple, you can go back and check it all out. Or you can also check it out audio wherever you get your podcasts as well. Truly appreciate the chat room, the best Lakers chat room that's out there, the Lakers Fast Break. And we'll be back later tonight to talk Lakers Media Day right here at the Lakers Fast Break podcast.
Thanks for watching.